Midlife women are holding up the world right now, and some of us might even say that our arms are getting a little bit tired. We are running companies and households, we're running marathons, and even running for office. We are half the population, and we influence the majority of consumer and family health decisions. Yet media try to tell us we are over the hill. Marketers infer that we need fixing, and too many women still leave their medical appointments feeling dismissed and disappointed. Through conversations with thought leaders, health and wellness experts, and women like you, we are cracking open the conversation on the new truths of midlife. We are replacing hot with whole and bitchy with beautiful. And we are pointing you towards quality information so you can get informed and choose the journey that is right for you. Thanks for joining us. Get ready because we are shining a new light on women who are navigating their 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond, all with the intention of bringing you one step closer to living your best midlife. I'm Shirley Weir, founder of Menopause Chicks, and this is Live Your Best Midlife. Now, this show would not be possible without the support of our partners. And today I want to throw out some gratitude to Pure Pharmacy, who helped us co-develop this vaginal moisturizer. I also want to thank the women of the Menopause Chicks community for speaking up. They voiced concerns, they requested more options, and we were able to turn to our friends at Pure Pharmacy and co-develop a hyaluronic acid vaginal moisturizer. And you can find more information at moisturizeyourvagina.com. Now, it is my pleasure to welcome our guest today, Sheela Zelmer, who is a pelvic floor physiotherapist. Hi, Sheela.
Hello, Shirley. How are you?
I'm great. It's so nice to see you again.
Yes, you too.
Thank you for doing this. Now, Sheela is a pelvic floor physiotherapist in Newmarket, Ontario. You're also a sought after speaker and workshop leader, and you train your peers. And what don't you do, Sheela?
Oh my goodness. I think like many of the women in our demographic, we do a lot, don't we?
Yeah, no kidding. So we're going to go through a conversation. You are going to leave this video knowing exactly what a pelvic floor physiotherapist does, why you need to have an appointment in your calendar. And we're also going to get to some juicy conversations too about sex and intimacy. So let's get started.
Great.
So Sheela, why don't you share with us, what is a pelvic floor physiotherapist?
All right, so pelvic floor physiotherapy. So physiotherapy is a term that's Canadian, and I think even in the UK they use that term, but in the US, physical therapist would be the term. Yeah, and so we are regulated health professionals. So we are physical therapists that have been trained in additional training to address the dysfunction that happens below the waist. So everything associated with the urinary tract system, the vagina, the rectum, that whole area there.
Cool. And so why a pelvic floor physiotherapist? Why do I need to see one?
Well, I think I often will tell clients when they are, thinking, that sounds a little strange. If you had knee pain and you went to see somebody and you said, I have knee pain, but they didn't look directly at it, you would probably wonder, well, how do you know what to give me for exercises? How do you know what I'm supposed to do when you left me in my jeans and you've just sort of talked to me? And so this is the way we address the pelvic floor, which is the area that runs from our pubic bone in the front all the way to our tailbone in the back. And so it's all that geography down there. But again, we're specially trained to evaluate it directly.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I never thought of that. I mean, imagine going to your mechanic and he didn't even lift the hood of your car.
Exactly.
Yeah, so this is an area of women's health that is not all that commonly discussed. Like, what are some of the reasons that we would seek out the support of a pelvic floor physio?
So there's a couple. So I think oftentimes the way our healthcare system is here, I'm in Ontario, and so I think it's very similar in the rest of the country. We're very reactive. So we might be experiencing something like bladder leakage, or maybe pain or discomfort with intimacy. Maybe we're having a feelings of heaviness or pressure in the vagina. Or we might see something or feel something when we're in the shower in the vagina. And so we'll want to get that addressed. And so we often will have people coming to see a physiotherapist for pelvic floor issues after there's a problem. But
Mm.
so I think that's a lot of us. We do that way. We wait until there's a problem and then we seek out some solutions.
Yeah, I hear that from women. I have been talking about pelvic floor physio a lot over the last year, but I do get a little bit of pushback. I will hear women say, "Oh, no, I'm fine. Everything's fine. No, I don't have any issues." And that is likely true, right? But what I learned is that I went to see a pelvic floor physio for the first time a year ago. And I went because I was wanting to invite other women to do the same. And I thought, well, I need to walk the talk. So I didn't have any symptoms. And I was surprised at what I learned at that appointment. So
Yes.
let's talk about reactively seeking out support as well as proactively.
Yeah, so it is interesting. I feel that there are more, I'm going to say women in a younger demographic in their 20s and 30s that are aware of pelvic physio. There's a lot of
Yeah.
celebrities that are doing it.
Yeah.
So I do have a younger demographic that are coming to me in a preventative aspect as
That's
opposed to
awesome.
waiting when there's a problem, right? Yeah, wouldn't we love that? Because the stats are really high that 1 in 4 women will have difficulty with intimacy, so pain, discomfort, or something like that. 1 in 3 women will have bladder leakage, and 40% of women over the age of 60 have a feelings of heaviness or pressure in the vagina. So that's a big percentage of the population that's going to be experiencing some of these issues. But oftentimes, I think we sometimes dismiss some of these issues because we attribute it to being normal. It's normal to have leakage. Of course I have leakage. I've had 3 kids, or of course I'm dry, I'm postmenopause, that type of thing.
Yeah, I think it's still common too for women to think that they might be the only one that's
Mhm.
experiencing this. So there's challenges in even communicating what they're experiencing.
Yes, for sure, because I think there's a lot of shame around this area. We feel embarrassed to talk about it. Maybe we didn't have good health information growing up. If we didn't have mothers or sisters that were open talking about it, we feel embarrassed to talk about it. And if you have a male doctor, you may feel even more embarrassed.
Right.
And so, and the other challenge, it's very interesting that they did a study of medical professionals and they feel ill equipped to talk about it. So they don't even ask the question.
It's so true.
Mhm.
So true. So walk us through because we've talked about heaviness, and I think you're talking about prolapse, but I'm not sure. So can you
Yeah, so I
explain?
say heaviness because that's usually what women will be experiencing. They will say that it feels like a tampon is part way out, or
Mm,
there's a feeling of like a bubble in the vagina. There's a ball there. And maybe when they are wiping or when they are in the shower and they're washing, they feel like a round sort of fullness at the opening of their vagina.
okay.
So, yes, that is prolapse, is what I'm
Prolapse.
talking about, which is where our internal pelvic organs, our bladder, uterus, or rectum, starts to drop into the vagina rather than being up and suspended. There's this descent that happens.
And is that reversible?
So, reversible is an interesting concept. So, the whole process of having a prolapse is a matter of laxity. So, our connective tissue does become more lax as we get older, and estrogen, as that drops in our body, which is a normal process,
Yeah.
it does make our tissue a little bit less elastic, a little bit less firm. So, some of that is not reversible. We're not going to be able to turn back the clock. I use the example of our breasts. If I never wear a bra and my breasts are down to my waist, there's no exercise that I'm going to
Mm,
be able to do to lift that back up. We're talking about supporting, and
got
that's
it.
where the pelvic floor muscles come in. We're trying to support and lift from below. Yes.
Got it. And so tell me about results then, maybe with someone who you see who's already experiencing symptoms,
Yeah.
and then what can someone expect who is symptom free?
So when we look at pelvic floor physio and all the different things that we offer to women that are coming to see us, so exercises, managing pressure and how things are being pushed down, toning the core as well as the rest of the body, because these muscles in our pelvic floor don't work in isolation. And when we look at this sort of holistic view, as well as addressing things like constipation, hydration, all of those things, women can expect that we can back up a prolapse or reverse it, what we call one grade, which is, a bit of a lift. We actually have a grading system for how advanced the
Yeah.
prolapse is. And it's interesting, you can have this dropping of your organs without actually having symptoms. There are many women that'll come in and things are a little bit looser and they're not feeling a feeling of heaviness or discomfort or anything. But on an examination, I can tell that things are maybe not sitting as upright as they once were.
Yeah, and I would just like to share with you, if you're listening right now, I did go to see a pelvic floor physio. I was symptom free, except for, a little bit of sneeze pee during allergy season. And I learned an amazing trick called the knack.
Yes.
We can tell people about that. But I think the biggest thing for me was walking away, realizing that I was symptom free and I had a stage 2, 3 prolapse and a rectocele.
Okay.
So
Yes.
what's a rectocele?
So a rectocele is where the rectum, so the back, that wall between the vagina and the rectum becomes a little bit more lax, a little bit more thin, and the rectum can start to protrude into the vagina. And this can then impact how we evacuate. We may feel like we're trying to poop, but it's not all coming out. We may feel like we went, but maybe there's a little bit more there, that type of thing. Yes.
Okay. All of a sudden my mind is jumping forward and I'm thinking, about my mother, my grandmother. Like, what happens if we do nothing?
Well, okay, so if we do nothing, these things are not something that just improve on their own. So whether that is bladder leakage, prolapse, or whether it is discomfort and difficulties with intimacy, these things don't get better just with time. And so if we don't address these things, the issues of muscle bulk, which is required for some things, we lose muscle bulk as we get older. So
Mhm.
again, we're going in the wrong direction if we don't address these things. And I think, there are women in generations past that would have just suffered. They would have just felt like, okay, I have something falling out of my vagina. I have to wear pads all the time. That's just the way things are. And that's what ends up happening, right? If we do nothing, it just progresses and worsens over time.
Right. So the message that I'm hearing you say then is that it's never too early and it's
Absolutely.
never too late.
Absolutely.
Is that correct?
Correct, for sure, because
Awesome.
we can address muscle strength at any stage. We can improve things like vaginal moisture, vaginal tone, all of these sorts of things. And there's no time like the present. So you might as well start right away for sure.
That's right. And it's the new year. And,
Mhm.
we're going to see calendar reminders pop up that we have to go see the dentist. We want to make sure that you also have an appointment for a pelvic floor physio in your calendar as well.
Amazing. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, Sheila, you have done a lot of work in the area of sex and intimacy. And I'm wondering for those women who are watching this today, if they even make the connection between sex and intimacy and pelvic floor physiotherapy. Can you share with us your messaging around that?
Okay. Yeah, for sure. I really enjoy working with this area in particular because I think there's a lot of embarrassment talking about sex and talking about intimacy. We can experience all different types of things as we approach the perimenopause, menopause, and then postmenopause years. Things like dryness and tightness. Maybe there's pain. Or in the other direction, maybe a lack of sensation. Maybe you don't feel anything, a lack of an ability to orgasm, or maybe it takes a really long time to orgasm. All of these sorts of things can be problems, and they're pelvic floor related because the muscles of the pelvic floor, which are external and internal, affect our ability to become aroused, to maintain that arousal, to become wet, to like open and relax, to allow penetration if that's what you want to do. So all of those aspects need to be there because the pelvic floor is not just squeeze, squeeze, squeeze and always be
Mhm.
strong, right? It needs to be flexible as well. But the challenge is when sex and intimacy are not feeling good, that drops our sense of desire, right? Like when
Right.
it doesn't feel good, then we don't want it and we're less likely to then want it. And that is a downward spiral that women can get into. Yes.
Yeah. So what would a consult look like then if I or one of our members was to approach you to talk about those issues?
So we would go through for sure a full history. So understanding your medical history, your gynecological history, and then we would talk about sex and intimacy. Um, Are you active sexually right now, or is this something that you have sort of taken off the table for the time being? And I'd want to understand why. Is it a lack of desire? Is it a lack of sensation, a lack of good feeling? And we would go through sort of understanding because for some women, it may start out okay and then they quickly lose the sensation, or maybe they never get there at all. So it's looking at the whole picture of, does it feel good emotionally? Does it feel good physically? And then working on what can we address from that? Is it a matter of stretching the vagina more, relaxing the vagina more? Is it a matter of moisturizing the vagina,
Right.
using the right kinds of lubricant, that type of thing? And then having strong muscles so you can have a good orgasm.
That's amazing. So, Sheila, I love that you're an advocate for women's sexual health. I think this is so important. It's such an important part of our overall well being and health. What invitation do you have for women this year in terms of helping them prioritize their sexual health?
So, when we look at sexual health, we need to recognize that it's just like any other aspect of our health. So, we talk about, okay, I want to be more physically active in the new year. Maybe I want to eat more vegetables. Well, understanding that how we enjoy sex is also a part of that. And so, what I would really encourage women to do is to ask yourself if you are not sexually active and you want to be, you would like to be, make sure that you're addressing the reasons why. So, is it something that you need to address the physical aspects, seeing a physiotherapist that can work with you? Is it something that you need to address the self care aspect, to have that time to enjoy and be mindful of the good feelings and connecting to that part of it? So, I would really say that I'd love for women to get curious and ask
Mm.
themselves, yeah, what's going on? And what can I do to optimize that part of my health?
That's a lovely invitation.
Mhm.
I also want women to understand about the appointment itself. I think
Mhm.
that I have members of the Menopause Chicks community who think it's purely a physical examination. And then I have other members who are actually surprised that there's a physical examination component. For
Yes.
me, what I really loved about working with my pelvic floor physio was the education and the conversation and what I walked away with in terms of information.
That's great.
Yeah. So how do you describe the physical part?
Well, like the whole appointment, we have a lot of time. And I think that's really key because
Um,
it's behind a closed door, it's not behind a curtain or something like that. So we have time to ask questions, to create a safe space where there's no judgment, where we can ask. And sometimes these are the first time women have been asked some of these questions,
yes.
right? So we want to know everything. We want to know about your bowel habits, your bladder habits, about sex, about intimacy, about arousal, all of these sorts of things. So we go through all of that. And I think that that really sets the stage for women to feel more comfortable for the physical exam. And so the physical exam is an internal exam. So it will often involve a vaginal and maybe a rectal, depending on what the concern that you're experiencing. But it's not like getting a pap. So your feet aren't up in stirrups, there's no speculum. It's just gloves and lubricant. The way I was trained, I sit at the side of the bed. So it's sort of like
Yeah.
a little bit, you're not right down at the foot of the bed. It doesn't feel as medical. And there's lots of conversation and lots of time to educate and lots of time for you to ask questions. And I think that's part of the whole package because it's not this 15-minute, real quick, get the pap done and get out. It is a whole process. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like a consulting, like a partnership.
For sure.
And then, and then usually some exercises prescribed and a follow-up.
Yes, physios, we love exercises, right? So, yeah, definitely there's usually some exercises. But again, it might not be Kegels. We tend to think that
Right.
that's all there is, right? But it's more than that. It can be relaxation. Maybe it's addressing core muscles. Maybe it's breathing. All of these things all combined because these muscles work together in our whole body.
Well, and the best part about that is that they're customized to you. So it's not as, you can't pull a book off the shelf and get the exact formula for what you're experiencing, but you can get a personalized care plan from working with your pelvic floor physiotherapist.
Absolutely. And again, this goes back to the same idea with that knee analogy that I mentioned. I will often have women that have, tried something off a blog, or maybe they bought, a program online to start to do the exercises, and they'll have a good understanding, but you can't confirm that the muscles are being activated the right way until you do an internal.
Right on,
Yeah.
right on. So my final question, it's something I love to ask all of our guests, and that is, what is the one thing you want women in midlife to know?
So I would probably say, I would have said before that you are worth it. I think that's probably what I would have said. But I want to say, what are you waiting for? Like,
Mm,
what are you waiting for? We would not hesitate if it were our kids or even our pets to do what they needed to do. If that meant regular exercises, taking supplements, doing whatever, we would do it. We would make sure it happened. And yet we don't do it for ourselves. So I would say, what are you waiting for? Yeah,
that's going to be an amazing title for this show. Thank you so much. And I want to thank you for listening in. I want to thank our partners. Please check out the links below in the show notes. Leave a comment, ask a question. We can't wait to hear what you have to say. If something resonated in this conversation for you, remember that you may have a friend or a sister or a family member that it would be meaningful for them to hear it as well. So please share it and do join us in the Menopause Chicks community. Thank you, Sheela, for joining us today. I so respect the work that you do, and I want to wish you a happy new year.
Thank you so much. This has been great. Thanks for having me.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Bye bye.